So just some basics getting into the residency. I have some really good websites that I'm actually going to post on our page for this event, and I think that is where we should start off in terms of looking at things. Everyone has to apply through ERA, so once you guys are in med school and you've decided to apply for residency, you have to go through a number of steps. Number one being going onto the ERAS website, figuring out, the application process, what do you need. So that normally includes getting a lot of documents like your CV, your personal statements, your letter of recommendations from at least 4 different professors, faculty members, places you've worked, research friends or research directors, and then even places if you're volunteered and you have a very good connection with someone. Use that as to your benefit, because the letter of recommendation does speak very well and very highly of yourself, and it can at times, if you have 2 candidates in a residency program and you guys have the same board scores and it's like, how do I choose which one's going? A lot of these residency programs end up choosing the person who has very good letter recommendations, where other people can account to their credibility as well as their reliance on doing the work and completing it. So that, like I said, that speaks well. So I'm going to post this website first, so if everyone can kind of take a look at this, and if you can follow along while we do this, that would be even better. So let me see if I can post this right now. So this website's from ERAS, and what I really like about this is it has different links for you to go to, but the one link that I really highly recommend is the roadmap one. And what's nice about this roadmap PDF that opens up once you actually click on it, and I will also post that just now. Yes, you have to read maybe like 10 pages or something, but you can skim through it, depending on what you're looking for. But it highlights from like point 1 to point B exactly what you need. So I would really recommend this, for number 1, figuring out what are the steps and what are you missing in terms of your application. Then it also talks about applicants who are either MDs, DOs, or from like overseas versus those who have done their work in the Caribbean. So it depending on where you're from, that can also change the status of your application. Because when I was in my residency program and I've sat on the chair for new applicants, we do look at where you're from and where you had your medical school from. Sometimes it can be a determinant factor, and some residency programs are in smaller places or rural areas, not so much. Okay? So other than that, if you keep on looking at this roadmap link that I've posted, let me see if I can access it too. I'm going to make sure everyone can see it. Yep, okay, good. Just highlighting how to kind of go through this. There is a very good timetable if you get a chance to look at it, and I'm going to try to post it up here. So let's see if we can. There's a timetable that you can also see, but sorry, it's probably a really bad view of seeing it. However, it's page number 5 of this roadmap to a residency that's posted on the ERAS website. It goes through the timeline as to when you have to submit your applications. So the application cycle for any type of residency, whether it's internal medicine, pediatrics, ER, or surgery, or you name it, everything almost opens up in June. And that's when you need to start writing your stuff. And then when do you submit it? Most people end up submitting it by July. However, the residency programs do not open any of their application cycle or in terms of picking out the applications until September 15th. So that's when they actually go in their system and pull out all the applications that have applied to their program, and then they pick and choose, and depending on if you want to go to a smaller center or a bigger center, there are people who are picky. Like, they will see where you came from. Did you learn from a big med school, like, in a city place or a smaller place? And then they will kind of look at where your clinicals were to figure out, can you be a right fit for these guys depending on what their workload is. So that's something to consider. If you are a candidate from overseas, or if you are from the Caribbean, then obviously you have to apply to a lot of different programs when you're doing your application cycle, because the more you apply to, at least one of them you can match into. So it increases your chances if you obviously apply to more, but then again, you should consider that there is a payment involved, and that's all written on the ERAS website. I'm sorry, I don't even remember exactly how much the payment is, but I do know that if you apply to a certain amount, the payment's the same, but then if you go over a certain amount, then the payment increases. Okay, so then there are certain people who will be prelims, which means that, they are going to do their first year, which is also considered either prelim or transitional, in one hospital, and then they end up going to a different hospital for completing the rest of their work. So, for example, those who want to do anesthesiology or like ENT, they end up doing these prelims, and you can actually apply to a different prelim place than you would to where you end up being for the remainder of your fellowship. So that is important to look at. And again, where do you find all of these residency programs? The best place is ERAS. So you can type in www.aamc.org, or you can just type into Google ERAS, and then everything comes up. And then you go to the different tab that has, applying to medical school or applying to residencies or applying to fellowship. So it's very nice that it's all, equally written there. So kind of going down the line. So what's next? Board scores. Okay. So obviously when you are in med school, you have to take your USMLE 1 and you have to take your USMLE 2. Now, residencies have really gotten strict, okay, since the last at least year or 2 years, and they really do look at board scores. Now, if you want to apply to orthopedics or general surgery or one of the competitor programs like urology or ENT, ophthalmology, they definitely weigh your board scores more than anything else. And it's almost like a pick and choose. They'll pick a pile of applicants that have had the best board scores and the ones that haven't, and they'll kind of separate them out. And then from the pile that had the really good board scores, they'll just kind of go around and be like, okay, so how many of these do we really want? So if you don't have really good board scores, unfortunately, they might just not even put you in that pile to consider. So how to get around it is a question I think somebody would ask, and the answer would be either have worked, with that residency program during your clinical years, or know somebody in that program. Doesn't have to be the program director always, but at least a faculty member, so that your voice could be heard. And number 3, I would say, is a lot of the adjunct faculty members at the bigger hospitals are also affiliated with the medical schools that are close within that region. So if you know of these faculty members who not only teach at your medical school, but they're also part of the hospital, get to know them really well. Start doing a research project with them, or even a case report. Research projects take a while, but as medical students, the more time and effort, and I would say willingness that you have in terms of doing something, they don't mind writing you a good letter recommendation, but also putting your name out there for the residency program. Okay, so when to take your USMLE? Honestly, it's all up to preparing for the USMLE, because there's so many different board prep programs out there. But again, if you take a prep test and you're not doing well, unfortunately, I mean, it's not a good idea to just take the test for fun like you do for an SAT. The board scores tend to stay, and once you are filling this ERAS application and you end up sending it to all of your programs that you're applying to, they receive all of the board scores, even get replaced by the highest one if you retake it several times.